Good morning.
Morning, Tim.
Students, okay, let's get started. I'm going to start with just a quick overview, although you've probably already taken a look at the website, hopefully. But JOBZ is basically a combination of what's classically known as CRM, that is like a contact database. Who are you calling on? When are you going to call them next? What market segment do they occupy? And all kinds of things around the database of people, which in JOBZ is under the tab address. But it's also, unlike most CRM programs around, it's really designed for a sales workflow of all the documents. And you might have taken a look at the workflow documents PDF that runs through the basic output of JOBZ. I'm going to hope to show you how to produce those documents here this morning. And incidentally, it's a sales management system, but it's a sales management system based on the fact that sales reps manage themselves. That is, all of the reporting and so forth in JOBZ about what's the pipeline look like, who's calling on whom, and all that sort of stuff is the same for managers as for sales reps. It's just that the managers have all the sales reps' data in front of them, and the sales reps just have their own data. So that is, in a nutshell, what JOBZ is. It is, of course, designed completely from the commercial printing sales background that I started in many years ago. I developed it while I was a printing sales rep and then as a sales VP with about 15 sales reps reporting to me. And it's also compatible basically with any kind of shop system out there in a very simple way that a set of key documents is produced by the software to communicate to estimating and production what the customer wants. And everybody gets the same information, so everybody's on the same page. We've been doing this commercially since 1996. Before that, within the company that I worked for, and it is the only thing that we do. This is the magnum opus of Carpe Data. Jim Taylor, this is it. It's printing sales reps are my life. So sad, but true. just kidding. And my favorite testimonial is a day without JOBZ is like a day without a cell phone or a car. Once you learn this thing and start using it, you realize, how could I get by without this? And I have people who insist on taking JOBZ with them when they move to a new company and so forth. That's about our only marketing channel, really, is word of mouth. So I'm going to let's just start from the very beginning here, and I'm going to launch FileMaker, which of course the whole system is built on. FileMaker, by the way, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Apple Computer. So when you launch FileMaker, the very first time there'll be a little Get Started window. You can close that. And what you want to get to is the Launch Center and the Hosts tab, because JOBZ is hosted on a server. You'll have a server named Dome, which you will want to set up. If you're outside the building, you'll want to set up a VPN access. And we've worked over the details on that, and it's working really well now. I'm going to be looking at my server here in the office. In either case, what you're going to be looking for is a file called Get JOBZ. And you're going to open it. You're going to see this screen.
Just give us 1 second. So on our workstation, since we're in a Windows environment, everyone should have a desktop icon that says FileMaker Pro. And when you double click on that, it'll pop up with another window that will have that Get JOBZ icon. And then once you click on that, it will show the screen that you have that's on the screen right now.
Yeah, you can have a a shortcut to this file. That's not a problem. You can just create that and send it around the network. Essentially, you want to come to this screen to get anything started in Jobs. And you'll notice how it filled in my name and password automatically. You can also configure it to do that so that it's super simple to get in, because all you have to do is click continue. And we're in. So what you see is the home screen. Since I'm a manager, it shows the manager home screen. If I was a sales rep, it would show the sales rep home screen. Just slightly different. It's just designed for managers to see the activity of all the sales reps. The first thing I want to show you, we have to configure Jobs. There's a button at the top that says You, and you got to get this set up right from the very beginning. First of all, you can have your own letterhead address block up here, and you can put whatever you want in there, but just don't try to put more than 5 lines of text in it. You can also have your return address. This is like for envelopes and labels and so forth. You can put your home address. There's a couple of documents if you just need to send a personal memo to somebody. You can use an output that uses your home address. This should be a sales number. I've just put, I think, user's initials. That's fine. It doesn't really have to be your actual employee number or anything. The work type is these are defaults. That means if you do nothing else, this is what it is going to show. So if you do mostly commercial work, you choose commercial here. After you create a new job, you can change it, but this is your default. Same with the FOB point. Origin is safe because you're not quoting specifically all the costs and everything and legal responsibility of a destination FOB. You should have just an HQ sales region and a few sales offices. I think Los Angeles and Sacramento are the only two. You'll have a few plants. You have your SC and Richmond, and so there's 3 plants. Zoom is how big the screen appears on your computer. I've got mine set here at 200. I have a pretty large monitor, and you can do, I think the default is 150. It usually works pretty well even on a laptop screen at 150. So you set your zoom, and then you'll have to start over for that zoom change to occur. This is very important. Jobs will make PDFs and attach them to emails for you and address the email to the intended recipient. In my case, my location for where those PDFs get saved is a folder called jobs_PDF on my Macintosh HD. It might be your C:/ at the root of your C drive. But the basic idea here is you have to have a folder, like here's my folder right here, and all the PDFs that I send are saved in there. So I can always look for a hard copy if I need to. They name themselves using a naming scheme. You know, it'll be called a request for estimate or a proposal, etc. But you have to have that folder in existence, and you have to say where that folder is. There's also a FileMaker username. This is the key to getting your password automatically entered for you. I'll show you how to do that in a second. This should be your email address, basically. You're using a system client, which would be like your Outlook, or in my case, Mac Mail. And if you want, you can put your own name or somebody else's name as a blind carbon copy address. It's handy if you're working off of different areas. You know, you've always got the emails that you send out also coming to you. Another important tab here is the coworkers field. I've put Karen here as my default planner, project manager, and also as my estimator. So anything I create in connection with a job will be emailed to her. So you should set your default person as their name and their email address for those two roles. You can also, if you send your billing information to a different email address, you can put that in here. Oops. Okay. So we're going to enter my jobs password here. And I'm going to click the little icon. This takes me to a screen that shows where I can change my password, which is, in your case, it will already be set as your last name. And there's a FileMaker Pro username. And what you do is you look for the preferences at the top of the screen, and you put your FileMaker username from jobs into the username field in preferences. So this is the key to having the automatic login work. And we say done. So other things on this U screen are you can have this appear in an email automatically. You can always change it just before you send the email, but this is an easy way. You can have a portrait signature. I set one up yesterday for one of your sales reps. Send me a picture and I'll do it for you. And then your email signature, which is, you can always use your fancy signature from your Outlook if you want, but this is just a basic signature in plain text. The other thing you can do here is up at the top of the screen where it says personalized specs. You'll see this in other areas in the job system. If you change the values that appear in this list of paper, for example, just add something you like that you use all the time. Each one of these is unique to each individual user. Likewise, inks, proofing, sizes, final size, flat size, packaging, all of these things can be set to your individual needs. All right. And you're done. So let's go over the, top left corner, look up there for buttons to do something next. And just a quick look at the overall navigation. We have a tab called Jobs, and we have a tab called Address. Notice they're slightly different colors. They'll help you realize where you are. And a tab called Memos. So memos can be anything. They can be sales pitch letters. They can be delivery instructions. They can be a huge amount of things. And what they do is link to either jobs or people. So this is sort of miscellaneous correspondence. This is your people, both customers, suppliers, your hairdresser, your girlfriend, whatever. There's categories that keep things separated there. And then this is your jobs, your basic work that you're doing. So just take a quick look here at address. We've uploaded all your contacts or whatever we had from the existing system and have put them in here. Now, one thing you'll see on almost every screen is an organize. You could, for example, have scheduled contacts. These are people coming up. These are people, recent contacts or people you've contacted recently. You can look at that in terms of a calendar. You can look at people whose, contact date is slipped into the past. You can look at things you've created recently. So look for organize to give you sort of sorting and finding information and help you keep an eye on everything overall. You can take a look at your accounts, your prospects, your customers. Once you start using the system, it'll track who's actually buying and, what have you written up for people. You can do projected sales and a plan and all kinds of things here. So look for organize. Now, that being said, it's already organized for you because if you have any people with contact dates in the future, they'll show up on this tab right here to contact. Likewise, people that you've contacted recently. So let's dive into organize some accounts. I'm just going to take a look at my accounts. Now, since I'm a manager, I get a chance to filter for other sales reps, but generally, if you're a sales rep, you won't even see this screen. You'll just see, boom, there's your accounts. And you can sort these views by underlined column headers. When you look at a list screen like this, sometimes we'll sort it for you automatically. Other times you can sort it yourself just by clicking on the word company, for example. And then it sorts it alphabetically by company name. So these are companies that begin with the number 2. Numbers come before letters. And then we get into the A and the B and so forth. And in this view, you can do a few things. For example, if you wanted to take a next contact off, like say down here where Penny, I have a contact date here that slipped in the past. I'm going to say, forget it. I'm not going to call on that person anymore. I'm just going to omit that. And so they go away from the scheduled contacts, and the next contact date is, and then I could add a day, make it tomorrow. See, another thing is you can see that a lot of things on the screen will have little tooltips attached. And so if you let your cursor hover over something, it'll show you what it does. So this would say, give this contact a date, next contact date of tomorrow. And you can also change what the purpose of that is. And you can also do this, which is cool. You can click on it and it goes right to that person's input screen. By the way, this is the input screen where all the information on the contact is stored. It has, if you click back on this button up here at the top where it says I'm on record 16 of 490. So I have 490 people called accounts, and I'll show you where we do that. But this will take you back and forth. So it's a list view, or it'll take you right back to where you were. And once I'm here, these little arrows here will take me through whatever the found set. So I was on record 16, now I'm on record 17, now I'm on record 18. This will take me all the way to the bottom of the stack, and this will take me all the way to the top of the stack of records. Another thing about this is that this company name here is what unites all the people at a given account, including shipping destinations. For example, if you use ship all the time to a list of stores around the country or whatever, put them in here under that company name as a shipping destination. It'll come in very handy. And you'll notice over on the right are all the people that are in that company with your name as the sales rep. Here we are. This is called the ownership tab. This is what gives you access to this record as a sales rep. When you log in, you're going to see records that have your name in this field here. Now, as a manager, I could change that to somebody else, or I could give this contact away to somebody else myself as a sales rep. I could say, let's give this to Jimmy Buffett. And all I have to do then is click the reassign link, and then the contact will be assigned to Jimmy Buffett, and it'll record that fact in the contact history. So this is the manager view because I'm a manager, but I'm going to go back to the input screen here. And this is the contact history. You'll notice that it just happened. Last contact, reassigned, blah, 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 blah. You can also use this just to record a contact that you pick up the phone, you call somebody, you can say, today I spoke about annual report or whatever, and I want to call this person back in a week. So it records that last contact activity, which happens right here, into an ongoing contact history, and clicking the 1 day, 1 week, or 2 week, or you can just pick a date. That sets it up as an ongoing future contact, and I want to, check in about the annual specs. And this will go on forever. This field is unlimited, and you can blow people's minds with what you remember they said if you take the time to enter that. I mean, years. I've made sales after contacts made years ago, and it's kind of amazing that they have this. What else you got here? So this is Paige Turner. Where does Paige Turner's office go? First of all, let's say it's got a parent company. You can collate people under a parent company. So there's a company name, but also a parent company. And I use this here. Like here's these are the people that are have 11 by 17. These are the people, sorry, that have Carpe Data as the parent company. All right. These are the people in that company with the ownership being Jimmy Buffett. All right. So you got the ownership tab and you've got the coworkers tab. Keep that in mind. Then you have the contact history tab, which keeps everything that happened in the past. What else you got here? Well, you got your usual address fields. And by the way, this little compass rose will show you the location of that person. That's me. That's my house. Then you go back here to the, you can, make sure you have an email address. This is very important because JOBZ uses email extensively. You have office phone number, fax, cell, home, whatever you want here. These are labels that you can choose. And there's a tab down here that shows you all the memos that you've ever addressed using the memo database and any jobs that you've done. So let me find, and here's another important navigation trick, and that is finding a person. You can put their name here or their company name. And here's a guy that I have a long history of writing memos for and doing jobs for. So these are linked together. So when I'm looking at his record, I can always see and quickly look up jobs that I've done for him. I can sort them automatically by name of the alphabetical or by date. That has the most recent ones at the top of the list. So this is your window into correspondence, just general correspondence that you've sent to him, and then jobs you've actually written up for him in whatever, whether they died or sold or whatever, they're still jobs. A job is a job. Some of them become orders, some of them don't. We also have a customer number. This can link it so that your accounting system and whatnot can identify your contact. What else we got here? This is important. This is the segments tab. So everybody has categories that they belong to. The top category is whether they're an account or a prospect. And then there's a subcategory called vertical. And these can be selected, we've set them up, I think, with your company's preferences, but they can be changed by management. You can also enter other verticals. Just type a new vertical there and it'll become part of that. People that you talk to all the time, put them on the frequent list. There's a territory also, which will pop up, Bay Area or whatever in your case. There's also a company type, which is sort of a further description of, what the vertical is. And you can type anything you want in there. When you have the field selected in blue, you can just say, let's call this a Chinese restaurant. All right. Then there's segments. These are, okay, so in each of these cases, you can only put one. But down here, you can say, well, he does litho print and he does digital print and variable data and blah, blah, blah. You can check off as many of these as you want. And they can also be configured by management to show different segments. One thing we usually do is put, say, newsletter as a segment. So you can just check everybody that you want to include in the company newsletter. And then there's more advanced things, but I think we should move on from this and write up a job and see if we can get through actually writing up a job today. But just before we go, you can also, right from this screen here, either create an email or a memo. If I want to just send an email to this person, I click this, and it asks what's the subject, and I'll just click training, and I'll click OK, and it's going to pop up my email screen. Is everybody there still, by the way?
Yep.
Okay, good. I hate to be talking to myself for a half an hour. So I typed something here in this email that's created, and there's my automatic email signature that I showed you on the use screen. And if I want to use a fancy signature, I can invoke that now. Yeah, Outlook looks a little bit different like this than this, but I could put in a different signature if I have signatures there, and I click send. Now what it did is it recorded the fact that today I sent an email with the subject training, and it put that into the contact history right down here, and it time-stamped it with my initials, and there's the last contact here. I could set a next contact, and you'll notice though that it didn't really capture the text of the email. So that's usually, that's good for a lot of stuff. You don't really need to, capture everything, especially when you're sending 10 emails back and forth all the time. You can just make a note that you sent it, or let the email thing do it automatically. But if you want to actually trace the content and track it and link it to this person forever, you use the memo button. And what that'll do is offer you a choice to, this is, let's call this China. And you can set a next contact date. You want to remember to call them by next Friday to follow up for the blah, 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 blah. And you can even give it a time. And then you click continue. So what this will do is it'll take you over to that memos tab and allow you to type some text in here. Type whatever you want. You can also choose a salutation and a sign off and title, and you can type your stuff. Okay. But there's this cool feature called templates, and these are shared throughout the whole office. That is, if I make a template on, say, here, considering CRM. Let's just use that template, and suddenly all my typing is done for me. And all that's left for me to do is output it. And I choose an email, for example. So this creates an email address to the person with all that text in it and my sign off and all that good stuff. And I click send. So this is now in a database of correspondence, right? So this little Rolodex card here, that will take me back to Rich. By the way, if I've sent him other stuff, those memos will be listed here, right? If it was associated with a job, which in this case it isn't, they would be listed there. I'll show you how to do that when we get there. So if I want to go look at this guy now, Rich Text, click on the Rolodex card. This takes me back here, and here's my memos. Here's the China memo. Here's the jobs. So get into the idea that this is your, command central for stuff you do for Rich, including correspondence, emails, or more formal memos. And the other thing you can do, let's see, let's go back to that memo. That was just a simple email, and I chose that from the output. Okay, so here's our navigation scheme again. You've got on almost every screen, you've got a go-to, you've got the list view, which takes you back and forth. You got the record browsing arrows. You have an organize, and it changes, of course, depending on where you are. And you've almost always got a new button where you can create a new memo or whatnot. And you've got actions. You can clone this and send it to somebody else. Or you can save it as a template. And then it's in the list for everybody to use in the future, right? Including yourself. And you have an output. All right, so let's send it as a memo instead of just a plain text email. So what it does is it takes me to a layout that has my letterhead and letterhead address and all that. And I can now choose how to output that. Well, let's email a PDF of it. Boom, there's my email PDF in preview. This is like, okay, it's got my signature, it's got my title, it's got the company logo, which you have a brand spanking new one. And I click continue. And what it's going to do is create an email addressed to that contact with the subject and that phrase that you put on your U screen and your address and a PDF attached to that. So this is what the customer gets is a PDF. And it varies depending on what email system your client uses, whether it appears in line or as an attachment. Now you can print a hard copy, but you don't have to because you've got that hard copy in your save folder. And I say no. So when I want to look back, I can just open my save folder and I'll see this memo there in case I need to refer to it. But even there, I mean, since you have a database, I find myself very rarely looking at, for hard copies because I got the data right here. So, it's like get into a new mindset. Now, another thing that's on almost every screen is the go-to. And you can go to back to where you just were, which would be the input screen. You can go back to the job if you had just been in a job. And there's other things on the go-to. You can navigate between the main tabs just using this go-to. So that changes again depending on where you are. So you got tabs. Remember, just click tabs and see what's there. You can't break anything. There's also a help screen. See this button in the upper right that says help? I recommend that you click that if you're curious about what to do on a screen. You can always call me. I take calls during normal working hours, not like Gephardt said 24/7. But you can click this and save yourself a phone call because it explains everything that's going on the screen. I'm going to go to back. And I'm going to go to home. So we've covered a little bit of what you can do with address and memos. Let's create a job. And to save time, which, hey, you're going to want to do that too. Instead of creating a new job using the new job button or going to that contact that we were at and, from that tab panel, let me make sure you see that. So on the jobs panel itself, I can create a new job for this person just by clicking this. Or I can go to the home screen and I can click new job. I'm going to go instead to the templates where I've created a template, which is basically I've just taken a job that I wrote up and saved it as a template, just like I did in the memos database. So I've got templates. These are jobs. And if I want to look at how all the specs are, I can click on it and I can edit the specs and so forth. Or I can say, well, this is the one. They do this every month. I'm going to create a new job from this template. So it creates a new job from the template. All the specs are there. But it doesn't save the contact. It just saves the job. So you can, use this over and over for different people. You can create a whole set of standard kind of jobs that you do and just use it. So let's use 11 by 17 because it's at the top of the list. And let's use Al. And it did a couple of things here. It looked up Al's address. This is Al, the sales contact. That's his customer number. And it looked up his whole address. The only people that are going to show up in this list here, like see where the invoice contact dropped down? It assumes that Al is both the sales contact and the invoice contact. But it might be that it's the accounts payable department that you send the actual invoice to. So there's at least, at this point, there's 2 people on this job in addition to yourself and your internal staff. There is the invoice contact. Now, see where it says terms of sale document D? It'll just say terms of sale here until you select something. And this is forevermore going to be associated with this contact at this company, 11 by 17. So you can just, otherwise the standard default will be, net 30. But you can choose whatever you want to be associated henceforth with this contact just by choosing something from this dropdown right here. If it's the same person as the sales contact, you can just click, see that the words invoice contact are underlined? That will just grab the sales contact information, right? And the little tooltip tells you that. So this is extremely important that you, on every job, you have to have a contact company, and then within that company, a contact. You can change it, it's fine. Like, let's make this Penny Arcade. And then that changes back to accounts payable. So this is the person who's going to get the proposal right here. This person's going to get the invoice. Now, I created a job title in advance. All of these fields, I'm just going to use the template instead of typing things. But here's a couple of things of note. This is a field label. See how job title and description, and then whatever I want. I could say versions or assembly or hey, whatever I want. That's going to describe what this spec describes. Got it? And quantities. Let me show you something kind of cool. If I just type 1, 2, 3, I can click the times 1,000 button here, this times M, and it'll multiply those quantities. This is a new request, not a revised request. If it were revised, I would have to say what's changing. And if I check the other box, I can type something like new coding back. All right. So you can't see that until you click that box, but that's what will print out. Job type. Well, there's only 3 kinds that I've ever come across. It's either a new job, an exact reprint, or a reprint with changes. And, there's your plant, and you have different presses at your different plants. You'll see that as you change the plant, different presses will become available to you based on that plant choice. All right. Today's the date of the RFE, and tomorrow is by default the estimate due. You can give it a time if you need to. You got to really do it first thing in the morning. You probably won't have a number in the estimate number field until you get the estimate back from estimating, and you won't have a job number in the job number field until you turn it in as an order. But these might relate to previous jobs and so forth. These fields will be. This is the previous, because the job was cloned from previous jobs. Those job numbers will appear here. This is you, and this is the checkbox to invoke your fancy personalized picture signature. And you can appoint a team rep. This is a way you can share jobs between people. By appointing a team rep, then they will have access to this record. Likewise, this is what gives your estimator and your planner access to this record. If Karen's name is not in either of these 2 fields, she can't see this record. It's yours alone. So it's a good idea to get that coworker thing worked out. Remember the U screen. Now, as an example, if my estimator was different on this one job, I could pick one of the other estimators, and it would address it to that person's email address. Likewise with the planner. Okay, so here's the schedule. We're on spec screen 1. You can see up here, this is the life of a job. It goes from specs to quote to order, maybe to schedule details, author's changes, invoice, and then there's an admin screen. That is the life history of one job. All right. So let's talk about schedule for a second. There's an auto trigger schedule, which is kind of handy. Basically, you just pick out an anticipated ship date. Let's say September 20th. And there's a button that says auto. What does auto do? Well, auto takes whatever number is in this field right here. Let's make it a 2. And it applies it as an interval between steps in the job. So the ship date goes back to the press date, which is date 0. 3 days before that, proofs are shown. And 5 days before press, files come in. Now you can change any of these dates. Let's make that 4 days. It subtracts Saturday and Sunday out. So if you want to, you could say, well, yeah, we're going to show the proofs on Saturday. Press is on the 18th, Monday, and ship is still here. And you can do first delivery or balance, etc. So this is just a quick way to get more or less a proposed schedule. I'm going to go on to the next screen, screen 2 of the specs screens. And I can do that just by clicking this little arrow down here. Sort of I work my way through this screen and I click this arrow, or I can click the arrow up here, or I can click the number 2. And just before I do that, though, this is that work type where commercial specs are more or less the standard, but there's cartons and a bunch of other things here that we'll describe in further detail later. But let's go on to the next screen in the commercial specs screen. So I have entered in the template, a size, but you can choose from the drop-down list. Remember the personalized specs, I could say, oh yeah, I need to have this. So if you take the time to enter the kind of things you do all the time, then you'll spend less time typing all the time. So back to job. See up here at the top left, back to job. It'll take me back to the first screen on the job. I'm going to go back to the second screen. And now my new size or whatever I put in there is available as a drop down. You can specify bleeds or not. You can specify the next thing. These are called components. So every job has up to 5 components. You might just say paper and ink, and here's the paper and here's the ink. And of course, there's drop downs for both this and these. Now, sometimes the drop down will happen automatically when you click into a field. Other times, there'll be a little arrow that you need to click. And this is based on the fact that a lot of times in this case, it's not going to be a standard paper. There's just so many papers and all that kind of stuff that you might just start typing in that field when you get to it. If you need the list, drop it down. Again, here, the same thing. I could just type something, or I could drop down the list. I don't have to accept a value. I can choose something close. Like if I wanted to say, this is UV, I can first select the aqueous choice and then change it. There's also, I can indicate coverage. See the little % sign here? This will take whatever's in that field and it'll add this to it. In some cases, that's important, especially on long run web stuff. On other stuff, it doesn't matter much. And then here's another component. And you'll see these words in parentheses. This is the label for this field. And I could, if I had a job that had 2 kinds of things, I could say, this is the cover and this is the text, for example. And I could describe, down here, I could say, okay, so this is going to be, the cover is going to be a 100-pound dull cover. And ink is going to be 4/4. We're not going to do any aqueous on the thing here. And I'm going to do the percentage at medium percentage, right? So I have just built up a 2-component job here, text and cover. And it shows me what it's going to print out like, text, cover. What if I have more components? Well, there's a tab that says more components. I click that, and you see I've gotten the text and the cover. Now I can add others, or maybe I would start here. If I knew I had more components, I would skip over this screen here, which just has 2, which is 90% of jobs these days. Go to more components, and I have as many as 5. And they're spaced out here because it looks good on the output documents that actually, if it's a 2-component job, it uses component 2 and 4. All right. I go on to specs number 3. Oh, by the way, this is paper certification. If I select a number here, it will call up a corresponding paper certification logo. And that will appear on almost all the job documents going forward. Let's go on to spec screen 3. Proofs, all right? So here's a slightly different way of choosing things here. If I say I need a high resolution imposition and a PDF, if I click this little gizmo over here, it will stamp whatever is selected above. I get into this field and I got choices, further information. Sometimes, you have to specify that the images are low res and you're going to do some scans and so forth. So that's an option. Finishing, again, you got your drop down list. And if something is close, you can, let's say, trim, disguise, die, score, and fold. Well, let's say, call it a inline score or something. So you can choose something and edit it, or just type whatever you want, or choose it from the list. You can add further details, perf 1 by 2 inch square, some kind of thing that is a further explanation of the finishing. There's also a checklist where you can just check off a bunch of things and click them into the specs. I don't know if people really use that or not, but it's there for you. What else we got here? We've got 10 minutes left. I think we'll make basically the job request for estimate and proposal process. You got packaging, you got FOB. This is a default. Remember, we chose FOB origin as a default. Here's our freight charges. What I'm going to do is I want to say freight is additional and there's only one delivery. I'm going to, see right down here, it says freight charges, freight additional on delivery, like I chose here. But I need to have the freight additional. I want to quote the freight as an addition to the job. I don't want to include it in the job. I could say that. I could say need freight included to, and the destination. But generally what I want to do is, stay loose on the freight. Now, what's the destination? Well, if I click the word destination, because it's underlined, it does something. It then shows whoever the customer is, and it gives the estimator a city, state, zip to use for the freight estimate process. There's also a tab. We used to use this more in the old days of 20 years ago or 10 years ago for doing color scanning, where you just pick transparency or whatever and size and all that. I don't think we use that anymore these days. And I go on to the next screen, which is the 4th of the specs series. And there's a few things going on here. This section of notes can be called, again, whatever I like. It'll probably be empty to begin with, but I can choose something or put something in there. And I can put in 2 lines of text. Now, the important thing about this is these notes are going to appear on the request for estimate and the proposal, but they're going to go away after that. That's intentional because this would be like talking about the versions. For example, you could say, need it, quoting it web and sheet fed, and this quantity is web, or, sheet fed, and this quantity is sheet fed, this quantity is web, and then, you can add more quantities yourself here. So these 2 quantities, we are going to do web and so forth. So you have these little labels above the prices, and you have 2 lines of text also above the prices. You can write a little short note to your estimator. You can specify who you're competing against. And you can put a little production note here to the, and now see the thing is here, this is RFE only. So like this note to the estimator isn't going to be seen by anybody but the estimator, right? You're telling them who you're competing against. You're not telling the customer you're competing against. And you're not telling the production department, you know, when you turn in the order. You're just saying to the estimator at this point that the scumbags are quoting on it too. Production note, by contrast, goes on the request for estimate and the sales order to production. So this would be the production note. So this is going to survive the process of quoting and selecting which version and so forth. And you can also suggest you do this, specify who's going to do the okay here. So this job, we're going to have the customer in, and I want to be there too. And the customer is going to want 100 samples, and the resolution is, you know, whatever resolution is. And this is the main category of the job. It's, let's call this one digital print, all right? By the way, see this job file here? You can actually attach the job file here, just right-clicking and inserting a file and pointing to it. And this won't go anywhere. This is just, you've got it and you're storing it in this record. If I right click, I get a drop down and I can insert it. Later on, if I need to, you know, send it to somebody else, I can export the contents here. So this will then ask me, where do I want to send it to? And I, you know, send it out to whatever folder or my desktop I want. But there's also a sketch feature that if you put in the sketch, then you can attach that as part of the request for estimate, and so the estimator can see what you're talking about. And you can do that by clicking these links: insert sketch or delete sketch. Let's insert the sketch and point to something on my desktop, you know, like some kind of drawing that came in that explains how this thing goes together. There's an engineering drawing, and I can export that out later on if I need to, but it's going to be included in the request for estimate. There's also a couple fields when you have to put in like a huge document that comes from the customer with all kinds of details. You can copy and paste that into this field, and if you want, that can also be appear on the proposals back to the customer. There's two kinds. There's the internal details and the customer details. And they can be the same or they can be different. And they're huge, right? So notes, back to the notes. I've now gone through 4 screens. We'll skip mail for now, but there's a complete mail functionality where you can check off all the stuff that you do for mailing. But we'll save that for a separate thing. Right now, we're going to produce an output. And remember the help button, right? We're going to produce an output, and it's going to be an email request for estimate. This, by the way, is designed to also function if you're brokering and going to different estimators. In your case, you're not, as far as I know. This is just going to be your default estimator there that you chose on spec screen 1 and programmed as a default on the U screen. And I'm going to click continue. And so what it's going to do is show me what the PDF is going to look like. Remember I said it was revised for new coding spec. Remember I clicked that it was an FSC job. And remember looked up the customer number. The sales rep it's titled up here, sales rep is Jim Taylor. By the way, if you're a CSR helping a sales rep produce a request for estimate, it's going to have your name here. You're the actual person sending this, but the sales rep is always listed up here. It's digital print, and Joan is my estimator. It has a record number, the unique identifier. It is time and date stamped. It shows the schedule that you have planned, it shows the plant, the press, new job, any previous jobs. Has all the specifications as we chose them, has the number, the quantities that we're quoting down here, how many samples, who's approving it on the press, what's the resolution, who's the competition. There's my estimator note, my production note, And oh, by the way, there's a red note that says there's a sketch attached as page 2. I click continue, and it creates an email, and it gets all of the specs actually in plain text. So they could be copied and pasted by an estimator and pasted right into the sales input screen on the shop system. But it also has the PDF attached to it. And the PDF looks like this, just like we saw it previewed. And you can look at it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the FileMaker file. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is actually email this request for estimate. Again, I get a preview. I click continue. I got my plain specs, my PDF, and I click send. So this job is now in estimating because it always starts as in estimating. And if I go to the home screen, I can see that it'll be listed in my little portal here. There's my Dome training brochure. It'll also show up in my Dome modified today or modified this week portal. So there's all the jobs I've worked on this week. Organize jobs that I've worked on today. There's the jobs, the Dome training brochure. Click on it, go to that record. Click here, go back to the list, back to the record. Navigate through the screens. Output, email, RFE. Oh, here's something else. This dummy request. I've already got the specs in here, and I can add a little note like this that says I need 2 dummies, whatever. And I can just check that, yeah, I want the customer to get one, and I want one to go to my production person. And there's the schedule. And oh, by the way, there's page 2 of 2. So I can output this now, look for the output button. I'm going to email this PDF, but not to the customer. I'm going to email this PDF to somebody else. Now, you'll see this often when you go to quote a job. If there's a set of jobs in the found set out of, your 300 jobs, there's 4 found. You can batch process them, which is very handy. And we can go into that later. In the moment here, let's just click on one. There's my preview. I look for the continue button, and it creates an email that is addressed to nobody until I address it myself. And it contains the PDF. And by the way, this PDF is, of course, saved to your save folder, so you don't really need a hard copy. And there's, let's see, oh yeah, let's just send that. And no hard copy because I know I have that. By the way, the green indicates that you can change this and call it whatever you want. Notice that it has the FSC certification. So highlighting that fact to the people that you might send this to your paper company or your purchasing department, etc. All right. So let's go back to where I was just a moment ago, or let's go to the home screen. Let's go to the home screen, and there's my brochure. The stuff I've been working on today is automatically listed here. The stuff that's in estimating is automatically listed here, and so forth. So we have now got this job into estimating. It's going to come back from estimating, and we're going to price it. Now, I have about 15 minutes, and I have to go to an appointment. Should I continue, or have you had enough for the day?
Let's just do the proposal.
Okay, let's do the proposal. All right, so this is a screen that has no pricing on it. We'll want to put some pricing on it. We're going to get this pricing off the estimate. So we might want to put in our estimate number, that comes off the estimating shop system there, whatever that is. We might want to quote date of today. Just click on the words quote date, puts today's date in there. We already told it what press, what plant. We already said what quantities we wanted to quote on. All we have to do at this point is put in the prices from the bottom line of the estimate. And I'm going to show you something that you might want to be careful about doing. But if I click extrapolate down here, it will multiply each subsequent quantity by that factor. So it's kind of like what you'd get on an estimate. If you're doubling the quantity, you don't quite double the price because of the make ready and so forth. So that's just a quick way of making up prices on my part. You might need to do that sometime. You might need to, like, you don't have time to go to estimating and you're pretty sure that, you can just add a quantity and extrapolate. But it's there if you need it. Now, so what do we got to do with this number is we have to multiply it by something. It might be a 1. If I click on all at 100%, it's going to put a multiplier of 1, which is essentially 100%. So my base price to the client right here is the price here. And by the way, this can be changed. I could say this is our ballpark estimate, right? Is this times this. I can do all at 110% or all, let's say 1.25. I'm really marking up the heck out of this job. Boom. Yeah. Now, why would I want to mark that up? Well, we don't have it quite working yet in your case, but we will get there. And that is, this now shows what my markup and commission would be based on a commission plan. So you can see what, if you change it back to here, you make less money. You go up here, you make a lot more money because there's more markup and you're sharing on whatever your commission scheme is. We don't have that information yet. What else can you do here? You can choose the rounding. Sometimes you want to show cents and sometimes you don't. So that's what this little guy does here. Again, you can call it what you want. You can also check this little box here. And by the way, these don't all have to be the same. You can say, well, I want to make this a little less expensive so they are more likely to order it. So I'll go in at 1.2 here and 1.21 here and whatever you want to do there. And it'll change the numbers. And by the way, if I check the each box, it will show me what those unit costs are. And you notice the unit cost is declining. This is a very expensive brochure, $10 a piece. So this is a good thing to do, especially if you're messing with the prices here. If you're messing with the markups, trying to get a little more, a little less, let's say, see what happens to 1.3, which gets me a better commission. And I can see, it's still, the unit price is still declining. Right? So it looks legitimate, but I'm actually getting a better markup here. And I think they're probably going to order the largest quantity. So this is what's called strategic pricing. You know who you're competing against, or you know what price you got to get to. And by the way, if you know what price you got to get to, you put that in here. Like, say, if I know that I got to get to 11,000 for this, 11,000 for this job, I can click the targets box and it'll calculate that I need to put in a multiplier of 0.89, blah, 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 in order to get to that price. So I can work backwards from a target price or just make up my own markups. Right? Next question is, what do we do with this? Okay, we've got the specs that we did. And by the way, I can go look at those specs and, if something changed, the estimator couldn't get the paper I needed, so I have to change the paper. Okay. As long as I'm communicating or reading the estimate output or whatever, I'm in the quote process here. I gave it an estimate number and a quote date, and I can now look for an output. So remember, you got go to, organize, actions, and output on almost every screen. It's time to do an output. And by the way, I want to include the schedule on the proposal. So I check this box. I now select email proposal PDF. This is the easiest way to get a proposal to the customer. All you have to do is select that. And again, you're going to get a question if you have more than one job in the found set of jobs, you can use all 11 jobs in one swell foop, or you can click on this one. So here's what my letterhead's going to look like. Of course, it's going to say Dome there. Going to have your personalized letterhead block, today's date, the estimate number, the email address of the customer, and their phone number. And it's going to have all the specs, and it's going to have all the pricing. Oh, I forgot to put in estimated freight. So this is a good example of what the preview is good, because I meant to put in the estimated freight. So here's what I can do. I can cancel and go back. And let's put in my estimated freight. And see how they're not formatted as dollars? That's especially important down here in these options, because you could put sheets of paper required, or pounds of ink, or anything you want in here. If you want them to be formatted as dollars, you have to take this extra step of clicking this, and they get formatted as dollars, right? You have as many as 4 different additional things you can put in here, and you can have them total or not. And I'm going to output a email proposal PDF. I get to review it. Oh yeah, now I've got my estimated freight, and the estimated freight has been added to the price, and my proposed schedule shows down here. There's a place for the customer to sign. It's got my signature, and I click continue. And guess what? It creates an email addressed to the client. It includes my phrase, includes my email signature, and it includes a PDF, which is filed automatically in my deal, in my jobs save folder. And I don't need to print a hard copy. I do want to do this, and I'm going to encourage you guys to do this, and I think Sherwin will probably encourage you guys to do this. I want to put this job in my pipeline. All I have to do is select the likelihood that I will make this sale. And I want to have the invoice date in the future. It's very important to have an invoice date in the future when you're quoting or printing jobs, because you're trying to look forward into what are you got going on, what's your book of business, and that all these ideas about organizing your pipeline and everything sort of relies on this invoice date, which is right here in the schedule screen. See, right? It's right at the bottom. I said we're going to ship out on the 20th, and you can, there's a default. I think it's 30 days or something, or maybe 10 days, which you can change, of interval between starting a job and the invoice date on it. So we're going to do 2 things. We're going to select the likelihood. How likely is this? Well, it's kind of a new account, and I don't know, and they didn't give me the last job. I think I have a 50-50 chance. And it's going to ask me, make sure you got the invoice date sometime in the future. That's all it really needs, is sometime in the future. So what it's going to do, it's going to take a average of these prices that I'm quoting and apply this factor to it. So the pipeline amount, since I don't know which quantity they're going to do, it averages them out and uses an average amount in the pipeline. So the pipeline amount for this job, if I felt I had a stronger chance, like a 90% chance, the pipeline amount increases. This means you don't get a job that has a huge dollar volume and a very low likelihood. It doesn't inflate your pipeline. So this is the formula. Quote average is this. Pipeline is quote average times likelihood. That's all you have to do. It's in your pipeline now. Now let's see. I didn't actually send that. Let's get rid of that. Okay. So we have now taken a job all the way through to the proposal stage. Your next step is to turn it into an order. And I can get through this in a couple of seconds here. This might be handy. All we're going to do is turn this into an order by giving it a PO number or some kind of to come. We already said all this stuff. Oh, this is a new chance to say who's going to get the proof. So we're adding a third person to the customer side of the equation. And this could be anybody. It doesn't have to be at the same company. So let's just say A4 Graphics. This guy is going to be doing the proof attention. So he's, this will tell production who to send the proofs to. Today's the original order date. Just click there. If it's revised, click the revise button and you'll fill in the pink blanks. Pink, of course, indicates you got to say something in that field. Next screen is which quantity are they ordering? Well, let's say they went for the big quantity, 4,000. So it grabs the information associated with this and makes this the order entry amount. Likewise, if I changed it to 3,000, it would use the 3,000 pricing and so forth. It doesn't actually add any options you have down here total because these could be anything. But if you want to add those to the invoice, in advance, you say, yeah, we're going to do this one. That's useful. So if you got any options that you want added, put them in here. If you're selling overs, which is hard to do these days, I realize, you can sell them at the cost per thousand, which is the max of what the overs would be. If I were quoting additional thousands, if I do them at the quote, they become this down here. This is the price per thousand. And if I use the quote, it grabs that price. At max, it would be the per thousand price, which actually, if you're discounting the job, or you might want to discount the overs. I don't know. I don't want to get into a big discussion about overs. If you guys sell a lot of overs, we can have a discussion about exactly how to do that. Let's for now just say that we're going to have zero quantity allowance, so we don't need anything in that box. And I go on to the next screen of 3 of 4 in the order tab. What are we going to match the color to? Now, this is different than what proofs are we going to show. This is what we're going to match the color to on press, and we're going to match it to proofs and drawdowns. And we're going to use a furnished sample as well, or we're going to use a PMS book. I already said all this on when I sent in the request for estimate. Remember, I said the customer and the rep are going to do the okay. It's a digital print job. It's all this stuff is already there. I'm just reviewing it. The next screen is the shipping destinations. Let me just clear these and show you how cool this is. Okay, let's just say that the customer needs 100 samples, and the whole job is going to ship to Penny plus 100 samples. I just click this little button right here. Boom. Here's our 2 shipping destinations. And by the way, this is a set of notes that are included on her input screen in the address database, little delivery tab. So if you ship over and over to the same destination and they have special requirements, you put it in there. You can add further destinations. You can change the destination. Let's just say we got 1,000 have to go to AccuPrint. It picks up the dates from the schedule above, but you can change them. Like the samples, for example, let's have those by sales rep, and these are whatever best way. But let's show let's give the samples on actually the date that we ship, right? I'll run them over myself. So we got, we should probably change this because I've got 2, right here I got the number in the order and the samples, number destined, well, that's too many because our order is 3,000. So this is 2,000. Okay, so now I've got 3,000 in the order plus the samples, and I've got 3,000 destined, destinations, and there's no difference. So I know I'm good here. And you can go on for quite a while here. There's lots of shipping destinations available. And now all I'm going to do is output email sales order to production. And it's a multi-page PDF. It's got all the specs. And the second page shows who all the customer contacts are. And here's the shipping destinations. And I just click continue. And it's going to make a PDF and attach it to an email. There's all the plain text specs for copy and paste if you so desire. And here's the PDF attached to it, which is also saved into your production, your save folder. So we've taken a job from the get-go through the order stage to invoice it. You know, it's so simple. All you have to do is say what the final shipping quantity was and look at your changes. And maybe you wrote some author's changes. We'll talk about that at another time. And you just produce an invoice draft. Oh, it won't let you do that without a job number, which you can get from your production department. And then we say output an invoice draft, and it'll remind you if the invoice date is not set for today, but it won't stop you. And then this is what you submit to output PDF to. You can just print it out, print or PDF it. When you choose this manual option, you get to name it and save it to a location of your own choosing. And you can append it to another existing PDF and so forth. Anyway, that's how you wrap up the job, because what that does is it sort of wraps it all up and it marks it as a build job and records it forever. And then you can always go back and find it and clone it. You know, it's simple to go back and say actions, clone a job, and go on and produce it. Or you could save it as a template and so forth. So we basically kind of in a hurriedly fashion gone from specs to quote to order. We kind of skipped over the ACs and we did the invoice, which wraps up the whole process. And now everything will work fine in my pipeline, because my pipeline will show, well, as a manager, I got everybody's jobs in here, but it shows the working jobs, the build jobs. It shows the pending jobs with their likelihood of percent and everything. And it shows you what you basically got going on in life. And it gives a nice bar chart when a manager does it. So I got to go. You guys have been great, a little quiet, but you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next time you can ask questions and we can do it. We'll do this as often as you guys need to, all right?
Thanks, Jim. Have a good weekend.
Okay, thank you, and you too. Thanks for using JOBZ. Bye.
Bye.